Hey Mike, you ever do any enforcement action off duty?
I tried really hard not to.
I mean, even at the gay bar?
I plead the fifth.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's Research Informed badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. Every day we post a real life use of force caught on camera so that your training and practice can be more research informed. I'm your everyday host, John Correa.
I'm your everyday co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Bakersfield, California, featuring the Los Angeles Police Department for some reason.
Mr. Target is the sponsor of today's video. If you're looking for excellently engineered steel targets that will withstand thousands and thousands of pistol, rifle, or shotgun rounds, Mr. Target is my go-to resource. They've got self-sealing rubber targets too, and you can see us use them all the time on the Active Self-Protection Extra YouTube channel. Hit the link in the description to check Mr. Target out and be sure to thank them for sponsoring today's video. I've sped this first part up just for the sake of time. You see this guy, I mean, I'm sure he's going to tell you that he is doing door-to-door evangelism in the neighborhood and out there, saving souls for the Lord, or he's looking for cars to break into to steal stuff to fund his meth habit. Either way, he's going to go up to this house and ring the doorbell, going to talk to them through the Ring doorbell. Good job on them for not answering the door to young Metthew here. And there's a reserve LAPD officer who lives in Bakersfield who we see come by here in his car, who's going to kind of take a peep at this guy who is, again, just continuing to walk through the neighborhood. I think this reserve LAPD officer who lives in Bakersfield lives in this neighborhood as well, is the best information that I have. So he's going to keep his distance here, and he's going to call him into dispatch, where young Metthew is going to walk again through the kind of houses here, go to this, I'm not sure if it's a trash can or recycle, and pick out his sweatshirt and a handgun. But the handgun is concealed in his sweatshirt, so our off-duty does not get to see that. Then our guy, I think, recognizes that the dude in the car is kind of peeping on him here. And so he's going to come back around to him, and they're going to have themselves a little discussion. So our officer is going to be like, yo, again, you're going to hear him on the phone with dispatch. And the guy's going to come over and they're going to have a couple of words between them. And then come to find out here, this tweaker is going to actually take some shots at the officer. We have a better angle from the house here from the front, and it has some audio. So let's listen in, hear how this one goes down. We'll be right back.
What happened? What happened? Huh? No. Huh? I don't have anything. Go. Huh? You go. You go. I'm not going inside the house, bitch.
Ain't nobody hit nothing with any of those shots between the officer and the tweaker. He goes back to the front of the house. I don't hear that he hits on, or tries to break down the door or anything like that. You did see that he had to clear some malfunctions out of his high quality High Point C9. Of course, the shots fired call is going to bring, that milkshake will bring the boys to the yard. And Bakersfield PD did show up in spades with rifles. And if you go hit the link in the description, Bakersfield PD did put out the badge cams of their officers. Frankly, I'm not going to include it here. You don't really get to see a whole lot. They showed up, did a good flanking move, showed up with their rifles, and are going to end up getting effective combat hits on young Metthew here. And he hit one of the officers with a minor, an officer had a minor injury in his leg, which might have been from shrapnel or something. I don't think he took a bullet in the leg because it says he was treated on scene and released. So clearly it wasn't that big a deal. You see him here change his angle from down the street to across the cul-de-sac. That's because some officers actually went behind into the neighborhood in the backyards, came out through there and engaged him from there. And he is going to shoot at them. They are going to shoot at him. They were more effective and better at that job. And so here is a picture of the high quality firearm that required multiple malfunction clearances. That one Bakersfield officer was slightly injured in this, treated at the scene and released. The young miscreant here, he did not make it. He took the front yard temperature challenge. I mean, but seriously, off duty, you can just go, not my circus.
Yeah, I mean, you could. He's still a peace officer. He can still do what he did. But look, just like a private citizen, maybe you're best off just letting the on-duty cops handle it.
You know, Mike, having worked construction as a teenager, man, I got to see plenty of meth heads in my day. So you see a guy who looks to you like he's tweaking on meth, and if you've been around meth heads, you can see them from a mile away. And as a reserve officer, you see that, yeah, you're probably going to call that in.
Yeah, in fact, John and I were at lunch the other day with our lovely wives, and there were some rather boisterous people at the next table that we decided to position ourselves in such a way that we can keep an eye on them. They are everywhere. You know, I spent 22 years of my federal career in San Diego, which is the genesis point of meth use with the Hells Angels. Thanks, boys. And yeah, a meth user, if you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all. They do all sorts of really erratic things like it makes sense to them, for example, to stow their hoodie and their loaded gun in someone's recycle bin temporarily for reasons that make no sense to anyone else. But in their mind, they're very confused thinking this all makes sense and everything they're doing is perfectly rational. Just understand, as a police officer, or as a private citizen, if you've encountered 99 tweakers in the height of tweakage, right, and nothing happened, just understand that what you're seeing here, this is a mental rep. This is a possible outcome. It is possible. They're not this harmless tweaker just digging for copper or mumbling and making no sense. Sometimes they're armed. Sometimes in their confused thinking and their contaminated thinking, they think that shooting at someone across the street is a good idea. Hiding their gun, is a good idea. Milling around this nice upper middle class neighborhood, they're not going to be spotted. They're not thinking clearly. Just bear that in mind.
Just bear that in mind. And I think I get it. This officer, I'm going to guess, lives in this neighborhood, sees it happening, kind of, jumps in the car to see where's this guy at so I can give dispatch a good report. I don't blame him for that. And I honestly think, Mike, he did a pretty good job of staying away from the guy. He didn't go up and confront him himself. He got on the phone with dispatch. Recognize, though, that when you do that, if you stay in line of sight to the guy, though they might be tweakers, they are smart in their own ways, and they can be very street smart as well. So in the end of things, our officer, by staying right next to him so he can give a better report, kind of got in an optional gunfight, and that is a potential outcome if you choose to do this.
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I always encourage off-duty police officers, sheriff's deputies, whatever. I encourage them to treat themselves like everyday armed defenders. Like, don't get involved in stuff. Don't get involved in third-party encounters unless you feel like you absolutely have to preserve someone's life. I would never get into a third-party encounter over someone's property or something like this. But like John said, I think this off-duty LAPD officer, reserve officer, really tried to not get involved. He stayed across the street, didn't get out of his car, didn't make himself obvious. But Metthew here is very hyper aware of his surroundings because of the meth going through his system. So he noticed this guy stop, and he keyed on it like, oh, this guy's paying attention to me. Probably didn't think this guy was an off-duty cop, but in fact, he was. So I think this officer did what any reasonable off-duty person would do in this situation to try to just sort of call this in, observe and report, and not get involved, but he ended up getting involved anyway.
Yeah, I will say, again, I want to say in the lessons that the person, he rings the doorbell and introduces himself or announces himself, and that person doesn't let him in, doesn't come to the door. That was a good decision here, because again, staying away from that, keeping a barrier, very, very wise. Now, what would cause this guy, oh, that guy's looking at me, and our officer is on the phone with dispatch, hey, I need some officers here, and our dude just decides, all right, I'm going to have a gunfight with him. What could possibly make him decide, you know what, I'm going to have a gunfight with this dude right now? Don't expect somebody who is high and is doing stuff like this to make decisions that you think make any sense. This is the danger, is clearly the officer here is talking with dispatch. Clearly he's staying away from the guy, but that guy decides, you know what? I just choose violence today. And this is why we say, as a general rule, you want to stay away from these folks.
Yeah, as I said earlier, you can never predict what someone under the influence of especially something like meth, a severe upper is going to do. His thinking is completely contaminated. Everything he's doing seems like the right thing to do, like the next right reasonable thing to do, when it's not. So, as I said earlier, when you encounter someone like this who's clearly under the influence of something like methamphetamine, understand that the reaction that you think you're going to get from someone normally is not going to be the reaction you get from this person. And there is an outside chance that they're going to choose violence that day, as this guy did. I think, honestly, this is a terrible place to get into a gunfight, right? You've got nothing but residential buildings in the background of everyone's backstop. So I don't think this officer certainly didn't precipitate the gunfight, but here we are, and now you got to deal with it. You're being shot at.
You got to deal with it. You're being shot at. I want to note, I totally agree with you, Mike. I mean, he's totally justified in returning fire. The guy has raised a gun at him and shot at him multiple times, and our officer's certainly justified to return fire at him. But I want to note, from a tactics, techniques, and procedures perspective, from a potentials perspective, he's sitting in his car, aiming out his driver's side window. What are the chances there that he is going to get good, accurate fire? Have you ever done that? I don't even think the vast majority of police officer training is from the driver's seat of their patrol vehicle, let alone your own personal vehicle, let alone what gun is he carrying? Have you ever shot it out the window? Are you used to the concussive blast of that? It's going to be very difficult to get good hits on target. Though, FIBSA, fudge I'm being shot at, does work, gets the guy to drop his head and quit shooting at him. So, all right, fine. But Mike, what's in the background here?
Yeah, nothing but houses. We don't know who's home and who's not. So got to be very, very careful in a situation like this. Look, you've been shot at. I understand the desire is to return fire, but understand that your ability to do so in this situation is limited by a number of things, many of which John just mentioned. But understand that this is not a great place to get into a gunfight. You're better off skedaddling, which is exactly what, to his credit, what he did after realizing this is kind of a no-win situation. He decided to hit the right pedal, the accelerator pedal, and bail out of Dodge, leaving this guy to his own devices, and calling it into the on-duty Ellie, which he'd been doing initially. What's strange to me, John, is how Metthew here decided, I've just been in a gunfight with an off-duty officer. I think he realized that was who that was. I'm just going to mill around in this area and wait for more cops to show up. But again, this is contaminated thinking. Anyone else would have run and got the heck out of Dodge. Not this guy. He decides to stick around. If you're watching this ring cam, this is your house, get yourself into the innermost room, treat it like a tornado, get into a bathtub, get everybody down low and far away from this stuff until the police can get there and neutralize this, because there's a very good possibility you're going to have rounds incoming, from the police, and the police aren't always as accurate as we'd like them to be. They're in a bad spot. So if this is you in your house, get away from this front wall, get away from it as far as you can, put as many walls and obstructions in between you and this gunfight as you can.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we recommend that people get into the bathtub is that normally the walls around your bathtub, they use rock board on those, which does have the ability to stop a bullet a little bit more than standard sheetrock. So it's kind of as close as most people are going to get. Now, maybe you live in an area with block homes, all right? And if you do live in a block home, then the exterior walls of your home will be kind of bulletproof. Not kind of, they are bulletproof. But for most of us, that's not the case. Get away from the windows and don't go out and confront this guy. I just can't say that enough. Don't do that. Let the professionals show up and do that. And they did. They did a very good job. I also want to note here, again, he did have a significant malfunction in this gun. I can't even really blame the high point though here, Mike, because he was shooting it from under his sweatshirt. And I think there's a pretty high risk that about anything is going to have a significant malfunction if you're shooting it under a sweatshirt like that. It's going to get fouled up in the process of not ejecting brass correctly or those things. So I don't want to give too much crap, although, the beauty of a high point is you can use it as a boat anchor at the same time. So, it's a dual purpose tool. I'm glad he had a piece of crap gun on him because that malfunctioned, and so he wasn't able to shoot at the officer more. I think there are some lessons here about engaging and even kind of sitting from afar. So just be aware of those. We're not telling you not to get involved. We're telling you be fully aware of the potential consequences so that you can take steps to mitigate them and cover your ass.